First off, holds. What are holds and what are moving holds? Well, technically they're the same thing. As animators, when we are talking about a hold or a moving hold, typically that language is interchangeable. Not all the time, but typically. Basically, a hold or a moving hold is a character, as they're moving, they stop and they hold a pose. They're not constantly moving. So they might reach for something, oh, wait, what? And then they stop for a second. That's a hold. It's anytime a character pauses. Now, a misconception with a hold is that everything has to stop. It doesn't. So, for example, if I'm moving forward, I can hold my body, but my arm reaches forward. So it's like, I'm gonna get that cookie jar. And then someone yells, hey, don't do that. And it's like, and my hand keeps reaching forward. That is still a hold. My body is stopping. The hand is continuing. So there's a hold on the body. So a hold and moving hold does not mean freeze everything. It just means something is being held. Now, the difference between the two, usually, again, as animators, we tend to mean the same thing. Basically, when we say a moving hold, it is just making sure that the animator, so for example, if I'm looking at someone's shot and go, oh, this part needs a moving hold, it's telling them that this part is feeling too still. The character has frozen too much and they're starting to feel dead. Or vice versa, they're moving too much and they need to be toned down so that it's more of a hold. Still moving, but more of a hold. That's all it means. So, we'll kind of come back to what that looks like in just a second. But let's actually go through here. So, let's animate something very simple here. So this cube is going to go forward. And we're going to keep this animation super simple for now. So we'll just have this moving forward. And now I want to create a hold in the center. Maybe it reaches like right here on frame 20. Let's set a key. And I want to hold that for 10 frames right there. So what I did was I set a key on frame 20. I middle mouse dragged forward to frame 30 and then set a key. What that does is I copied the key from frame 20 to frame 30. This is what's typically called a copied pairs method. It's a way of creating holds, is that you just take one key and you copy it. So now the cube comes forward, it stops, and then goes forward again. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now we have a hold. So this is technically a hold. Good, yay. The problem is this is a perfect hold or a dead pixel hold. There's a lot of different names for it. Usually what it means is that the character is moving so little that we can't even see anything. Every pixel on screen stays perfectly in place. It is just absolutely dead. It lost all of its life. So this is where we would want to start adding a moving hold. Again, I'll come back into that a little bit because there's other things that kind of build up into a moving hold. So, well, actually, no, let's actually do this first. Let's actually finish each one as we go. So, instead of having the character stop completely, basically, you would just need to have a little bit of continued motion. On your shot, you have parts that totally stop. On my shot, I have some parts that completely stop, but there's others that keep moving that keep it alive. So it's not that everything has to keep moving, but something should. So we don't want dead pixel holds? Not typically. Not typically. It really depends on the style of film. So think of Hotel Transylvania, if you've seen that. There are moments in that show where the characters just freeze and they don't move at all. It is dead. That's fine because that's the style of the show. But if you're animating anything that's remotely more realistic, like Disney Pixar style, that feels very out of place because that's not how the real world works. We've got a heartbeat, we've got blood pumping through our veins, we've got breathing. if a character stops completely, all of that is not working anymore either. There's no blood pumping, there's no breath, there's no life to the character. So this is why we want moving hold. It recreates that feeling of continued life in a character. So to create a moving hold, I like to use the graph editor. I'll talk a lot more about the process of using the graph editor in a little bit. But really what it is just making sure that, like we were talking about before, how that flat curve is perfectly flat. We don't want that. We want a little bit of motion. So I'll just move the one key here, and suddenly there's no point where the curve is perfectly flat right here. It's just a tiny move. But now as it stops, see how, I don't even know if it's coming through the stream here, but let me actually, I'm going to buffer the curve so we can compare. So bring that there, and then this one will kind of flatten out again. Oops. And then flatten both of these. So if we look at the cube, see how right now there's no motion. As I scrub through this hold, there's nothing. But with a moving hold, it's just enough motion so that I scrub through this, and you can see how the lines are just like ever so slightly shifting. That's enough for a moving hold. It shows that there's still life in there. That instead of the object freezing completely, there's this residual motion. Now, the direction of the motion, how we build that up, is very dependent. We'll talk about that later when we get to a more complex shot. But for something like this, it's just a matter of keeping it slightly alive. So when we look at this now, as it stops, there's not a moment when we look at the animation and go, oh, it's completely dead. In the back of our mind, we still feel that tiny bit of motion. So that's really what a moving hold is. It's just keeping things alive enough. Now, the amount you add is really dependent on what you want to do. So that could be a moving hold, but something a little bit bigger here, that would still be considered a moving hold. It's still holding, just a little bit more. There's no kind of black and white on this. It's just various degrees of gray until it doesn't look quite right. So it's either, it's not quite still enough, keep it more still, or, oh no, it needs to move a little bit more, move it a little bit more. It's an art form. So there's no like, yes, no, this much and nothing more, and this little and nothing less. It's very, very dependent. So very dependent on the scene as well, and the style of the scene. So, moving hold. Now, let's go into ease and settle first. Because ease and settle is basically what we've got here. As the cube comes in, it eases in to a stop, or settles into a stop, and then it eases out slightly out here. That's an ease and settle. You slow into a pose and you ease out of it. Now, that's a good question. Is there an ideal amount of frames needed to feel the moving hold? Not typically, but keep in mind that anything less than 4 frames is usually not quite enough to feel something. The human eye tends to only register things that happen in 4 frames or more. Anything less than 4 frames is not enough for our eyes to capture, keeping in mind that this is at 24 frames per second. So if I create a hold that holds for 3 frames, there's going to be a hitch in there, but that's what it's going to register as a kind of little pop in the motion, a little hitch versus a hold, a pause. Usually we want a little bit longer than that. A lot of it really depends on the style of the animation. For fast, cartoony animation, you can go away with shorter holds. For more realistic stuff, you'll kind of tend to go for longer holds. It really just depends. So we've got the ease in, ease out here. Now, the ease in, or the settle, is one of those things that really just kind of happens naturally if you're using, for example, auto tangents. And NS Films, thank you so much for the subscription. And yes, I should take a sip of water. I totally forgot about that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, the ease in, ease out, those tend to happen kind of naturally, but at the same time, if you're just relying on Maya's curves to get you the ease in, ease out, usually it's not going to work quite right. The main reason is that oftentimes they're a little too sharp, which creates the next thing, which is hitting a wall. Hitting a wall is the feeling that as a character stops, or in this case the box stops, we're not feeling the ease, or the overshoot, which we're going to talk about in just a second. We're not feeling that enough. Instead, the character just kind of comes up and stops and then keeps moving. It literally feels, let me actually put it this way. It's the feeling that this is happening, where the move just happens and then just freezes and then keeps going. It's literally like it hit a wall. It just stops for no reason. If you're getting that feeling, usually you need to push the ease and settle more, or add in an overshoot. So in this case, let's try to push the ease and settle a little bit more. So I can do this mostly just by adding another key in here. So I'll just ease that into a stop a little bit more. You can see how much more I'm pushing it there. And then let's ease out just a little bit slower. Like that. So now we're just kind of exaggerating that motion there. Now, as the object comes in, it doesn't feel like it just stops randomly. It feels like there's enough of a slowdown to help avoid that just sudden impact. Same thing when it comes out. It doesn't feel like it just gets knocked out. It feels like it's building up the speed itself. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is with overshoots, and overshoots are one of my favorite things to add in, and unfortunately as students, it's one of the things students tend to miss out most on. And I know for myself, when I was a student, it was one of the things that took me a long time to just start putting into my work, because it's like, oh, I'm just ease in, ease out, ease in, ease out. That's what you do. You ease in, you ease out. Overshoots make your animation really come to life, especially for more action-oriented shots, more explosive actions. So an overshoot is basically when an object comes to a stop, it's going to go past its destination and then settle. So let me just go full screen here. So for example, if I'm going to reach forward, my hand doesn't just reach forward and then ease to a perfect stop there. It also doesn't just lock in place. That would be hitting a wall. Instead, if I'm reaching out naturally, I do this. See how I'm not exaggerating this. I'm just going to reach out. See how my hand kind of goes past and then back? Whoop, like that? That's an overshoot. And you can kind of think about it, it's the anti-anticipation. So an anticipation is the build-up into a motion. So I'm going to go that way. So I'm going to build up a motion to go over there. I'm going to build up energy, anticipate, to leap over in that direction. So there you go. Now we've got all this energy and we have to come to a stop. Well, all that energy just doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. Oftentimes, it just kind of drags us along until we settle. So it's the energy kind of dissipating and then settling back into the position we wanted to be. So it's the anti-anticipation. So just like that. So an overshoot would be like a bat hitting an object and continuing swinging. Not quite. That would be a so if you're, let's say you have an object and you hit, that continued motion, that's just the object continuing through the motion. this is basically trying to avoid the hitting a wall thing where it just hits and the ball goes. An overshoot is, it would be at the end of the swing. So the character swings and then they settle back here. So they go past and then back. That's the overshoot. They've gone past where they wanted to end up in. So it's what would be a good one? Well, you see this in like punches as well. So if I'm gonna punch at something over here, if we watch my hand, if I line it up to the edge of the screen here, okay, yeah, so Greg, yeah, exactly. So it would be that final stop. So if I'm gonna put my hand here, I don't just go chook and just stop right there. That makes for a very boring punch or motion. Just boom, ease in, which is okay for certain actions. So for example, I'm gonna go like this kind of smaller motion, that could just need an ease in. I don't need an overshoot. Like that's a little too much for just ease into that hold. But when you have more energy, then you start needing that overshoot, or else you just kind of get doop, meh, and it doesn't feel strong. But if you do this, see how my arm, it not only overshoots, it goes past and then settles in. Watch the elbow. See how it, for just like one frame, it over straightens and then comes back. And I'm not exaggerating that. This is just me kind of putting my arm forward. Even the shirt, you can feel it overshoot as it pops up and then down. And that's the overlap, the secondary motion. But it's pushing that energy and letting it dissipate before it settles. So it'd be good to put your overshoots in while you're doing your anticipations. Yeah, it really depends on your style of animation. I typically do around there. They kind of go hand in hand in many ways, but it usually goes in with the holds. So I'll put, if I'm really working on my holds, that's when I'm going to be kind of starting to put in my overshoots. So, for example, here, let's say we want this to be a little faster. So instead of this curve here where it slows in and eases, let's get rid of that. Let's go back to this one. And I want to overshoot it. So instead of having the curve kind of keep dipping down, I might do something like this. Now that curve comes in, goes past the hold, like so, and then we get that settle. So how does this feel? There we go. So now you can feel it's tiny. It's very tiny. But that little bit of a, like, whoop, that extra little hitch in there. Oops, don't need that many frames. It just creates that a little bit of an overshoot. It's instead of stopping exactly where it needed to be, it went past. And I do love this music as well. Let's see. Oh wait. Do humans ever do a dead stop? Not normally, no. The only time we'll do a dead stop is if we're going to want to have internal damage. So this is if ever you've been in a car accident or something like that, it's the reason why you get hurt, you get whiplash, all of this, is it's too sudden a stop. You're driving along and then suddenly everything just stops. Your body stops, the car stops. It's not a perfect dead stop, but it's a very, very abrupt stop. And what that causes is the seatbelt holds you in place, your whole body wants to move forward, and instead of your body moving forward, your internal organs keep moving forward. Even though your body has stopped, your outer body, your internal organs keep moving forward. Your heart, your lungs, everything slam into your rib cage and your insides. It's not good. We are not made for sudden stops. Humans, like, we're jiggly. we're very soft. If we have sudden stops, even if it's a little one, you don't have to be traveling fast. Think of maybe you're just walking along and you walk into a wall. like maybe a glass door or something, how much that hurts. You're not running into the wall, you're just walking at a normal pace, but that sudden stop, that's what a sudden stop is. It's this total dissipation of energy in the wrong time. We don't want that. We want the overshoots. We want the ease and settle. We do not want the hitting a wall motion unless, of course, the character is literally hitting something or being hit by something. Let's see. I got a question kind of unrelated to all this. Is it possible to animate all day long every day and not get any better? Better at animating, kind of like doodling. Yes, it's totally possible. I've seen it happen before with many students, and the key thing here is let's see. Actually, let me hold off on that because that's a really good question, and I want to dive into that because that's a whole topic with a lot of different things we can go over. But yeah, I definitely want to go over that. Bring that up after we're done the demo here. That is a really good question. Let's see. I was working night shift and I wasn't able to catch the first part of the stream. Will this one be available for download? Yes. So all the streams are available for rewatching. If you just click on the avatar down there on the stream page, you can go to the videos and see all the past streams. At least for the most part. Some of the older ones are gone. I do have them on my computer and I'm re-uploading them when I can, but most of the new ones are all archived there now. So yay. So this is basically a moving hold in essence. A moving hold is basically, and Blocking Spline, thank you so much for the subscription. 4 months, geez, thank you so much. Oh, and take care. Have a great day. I love this song. So, holds and moving holds. Basically, they are a way of having a character come to a stop, but not freeze entirely. We do this by either easing in or overshooting in. That's it. And then we want to make sure that the curve doesn't stay perfectly flat. That's really it. Now, all of that, I'm sure, like, for the most part, makes sense. You look at this animation, yeah, got it. But let's step up the difficulty a little bit. What if you have something like this? And suddenly you have a character that's supposed to come to a hold, and you've got all of these different body parts that all have to stop, but not all stop at the same time. And not all feel like they stop at the same kind of time. And how do you even start to work on that? This is tricky. This is very hard to start working on when you're first learning. So let's actually apply it to the cube first. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to just make the animation a little bit more complex. So right now we've just got this basic cube. It comes in, stops, moves out. Okay, let's simplify our animation back down to the root of it. So it's moving forward, and then make sure this hold is a perfect hold. So it locks in, moves. So now we don't have a moving hold, it just is boring. But let's add some complexity. Maybe at the beginning here, the cube is going to start dipping down. So it kind of dips down and then comes up like that before, let's say at the end, how do I want to do this? I'm just kind of making this up as I go. Let's see. It's gonna go down. Maybe that's a little too fast. So it comes down, and then let's just have it go down here to a stop. So something like that. I'm not going to worry about cleaning up the curves just yet. So we've got that. We'll just kind of focus on a side view here. But not only do we have this, what if we have the cube rotating as well? So the cube comes in, it rotates, and I want to lead that up here a little bit. That needs to come up. Now this is going to be me just getting picky about my overlapping action on the rotation here. Okay, comes up, and then let's say it drops back down here. Okay, so we've got this little bit of an animation with the cube. Like that. It's a little dead right in one section. I'm getting picky. Right here, it feels like that rotation needs to get a little bit more interesting there. Okay. That's a little better. Not great, but for demo purposes, I don't want to get too nitpicky on this. I could just get way too complex. So we've got this. We've got multiple curves going in. We've got 3 curves right now. Translate, 2 translates, and the rotate. Now, how do we make this so that the object, when it comes to a stop, it comes to a nice natural stop with a nice moving hold, versus what's happening now is you've got all of this motion, all of this cool animation, and then when it stops, you really feel it now. Now that we've added other motions and that rotation, how it just kind of locks in place and then moves again. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel alive. So, with that, let's figure this out. So, the way I like to approach it is I like to use the graph editor. So let's actually look at our graph here. And one thing that you'll notice is the reason that this is feeling dead is that from frame 20 to frame 30, all of the curves are perfectly flat at the same time. That is boring. It is not interesting. So, how do we make it interesting? Well, when people first start out, they go, oh wait, a moving hold, that has to be movement. Okay, so I just have to keep it moving. So they might just take all of their curves and just nudge them over a little bit. So now none of the curves are flat. All of them have a little bit of motion here. So you do something like that. But now what you get is this weird, like, just, it comes to a stop and it's like, it just kind of, it floats around oddly. It's a little better in the sense that well, at least it's a moving hold, but it doesn't look interesting. It doesn't add to the animation, it's just there. A moving hold is not just a matter of making sure it moves. If that was the case, our jobs would be a little too easy. Instead, it's making sure that it moves correctly. And the way I like to think about it is, how does the object stop? And how does it start moving again? What's going to lead? What's going to follow? I ask myself these questions. And what I'll do is I'll just go one curve at a time and try to understand what I want to have happen. So let's actually start with a translate Y, the up and down. And let me undo so we've got the perfectly flat curve. So we've got this object. It anticipates downwards. So it's starting to move, it drops. And then it starts to lift up. Again, I might add a little overshoot to that. Right there. Starts to come up. And it just kind of freezes as it comes to the top here. Well, how can I make that more interesting? Well, what if as it comes up, instead of just kind of coming up and like it's looking up and then just easing up like that, what if it kind of comes up and we get a little bit of a rise and then fall, a little overshoot? So instead of just coming up and easing to a stop, what if we do this? We have that curve come up And let's exaggerate a little bit more so we can actually see it. Oh, and actually, yeah, so we get that kind of little up and then settle, overshoot and then down. So just do this. So something like this. Now it comes up, whoop, and then down. So we just get a little bit of an overshoot there. Now, another thing we can do is maybe we want the overshoot to happen a little bit before the stop. This way we can have a little bit more of a hold. So you can see here how instead of turning it this way, which now makes it so our hold doesn't really hold anymore, it's just constantly moving, I'm adjusting the curve on the other side. So the overshoot happens before the stop, and then we get a little bit more of a hold in here. We get that little boop, and then it comes to stop right there. Now it's going to look a little weird because we're only doing one curve so far, but like that. So the way I'm thinking about this is I've got a lot of residual energy here. There's a lot of motion here. This curve is very steep. So if it's very steep, if it's fast, there should probably be an overshoot happening. So comes in right there, overshoots, and then settles. Now, as it's about to drop down, how can we push this? Because right now everything just starts moving together at the same time. Well, what if the curve here, it should lead the action a little bit? Or actually, what if it anticipated? What if instead of just kind of holding here, it actually came back up just a little bit? What if I just did this? Create a little anticipation where it comes down and then we get a little up, a tiny, like just a few pixels. Now it comes down. We've got an overshoot and now we have an anticipation. It's still holding. Maybe I could tone it down a little bit right here. But I'm thinking through what I want. Now that's a good question. What tangents do you prefer to use? I like to use weighted tangents, but if I was doing this like on a proper project, I'd be setting keys. I wouldn't just be using my tangents for this. So I might set a key in here just to kind of lock down that hold a little bit more. And you can do this with weighted or non-weighted tangents. It really doesn't matter. So now we've got that. Okay. Let's look at our forward translation. So this is the side to side. Well, here, this is pretty slow coming in here. It might not need an anticipation or an overshoot coming in here. If anything, I might just be able to ease in a little bit more. So let's kind of ease that in just a bit. Maybe add an extra key in here just to push that ease right in there. So it comes to a stop. And now, suddenly, look at what's happening to our curve here. See how before it would have just been a perfectly, it comes in, locks, and then that's it. Now we start getting this. It's starting to make a little bit of an arc. Right there. Now, I think that's good for that part. Right here, what do I want? So the object should come in, hit. It doesn't have much speed, so it shouldn't overshoot. So maybe just kind of push this curve here. And let's just maybe give, I'm gonna add another key in here. Let's give a tiny anticipation maybe. Actually no, let's actually just push the ease out a little bit more. Like so. Now we get this. Comes up and we get this kind of little double bounce to it. Like that. Okay, let's go to our rotate X. Okay, what do we have here? So the rotate X, this is kind of the leading action. It's tipping and leading with its nose in a sense. So in this case, I would probably want to add a little bit of an overshoot in here. Let's see how that feels. Or actually, no, let's do something else. Where as it's coming up, it kind of like reaches up and then holds that and then comes down. So maybe, hey Jeff, Steph, thank you so much for the subscription. Oh geez, Jer Adam, geez, thank you so much for the 6 gift subs. Oh man, thank you so much. Jeez. You've done 6 gift subs so far. Jeez, thank you so much. So, I want to kind of have this, I'm kind of imagining like a whale. If you see a whale kind of jump out of the water and it has that hang time before it comes crashing down, that's what I'm kind of envisioning here, in a tiny little box way. But as it comes up, maybe it holds this pose just a little bit. Just up a little bit higher here. So that when it comes down right here, I can really push that overshoot downwards. So it comes up and then we get that little hang time. It comes down and then it'll want to anticipate that motion here. So let's take this and maybe add just a little bit more time here, where we just get maybe like 2 frame motion here, where it kind of comes up. No, not liking it. So let's actually try the opposite, where now instead it's going to, let's undo, let's lead it this way. So we push the anticipation earlier. See how that feels. So now it comes up. Yeah, that feels better. So now we get this. So now we've got an overshoot right in there. I'm gonna fix this curve here. Overshoot, anticipation, and then comes down. Like so. Now on top of this, you can also offset keys. Now I usually do this more in the polish phase, but if that's where you're at, you can kind of offset them. So I want this to lead just a little bit earlier here for that drop. So now we get this. Now that's a little much. I can probably tone it down. It's starting to be just constant motion instead of a hold. But I've built in the core of it. So now it's just a matter of refining. But, and we'll look at it in just 1 second here all together. The core of it is basically that I am looking at each curve individually and trying to figure out the best way to enhance each curve. Not the whole thing as one piece, but each curve. And when I do that, and I really think through, what I get is this motion that is no longer just kind of a stop and then a slide, but a motion that has momentum. Certain attributes will keep going. Some will overshoot. Some will settle. Some might freeze completely. There's so little motion in them, they don't need to keep moving. They just kind of lock in place. Others might just keep going. So that's really it. It's going through and thinking of each thing. And in the end, if we look at my curves here, rotate X. Look at the holds now. So let's normalize this. So this is my hold right there. They're no longer the same. Every one of them is slightly different. This is what gets you that natural hold. That moment where a character stops, and instead of everything just kind of moving together and sliding through space, you get a natural offset to things. the translate Y is not going to settle in the same way that the translate Z, depending on their motion, especially if a character is running and then they screech to a stop. Their hips, the translate Z, might overshoot a huge amount, but the translate Y might just ease in as they kind of angle down and their knees brace themselves. You get all sorts of variations in this way, but it really just comes down to thinking through it and then thinking of, okay, do I need an overshoot? Do I need a settle? Do I want this moment to feel like the character's hitting a wall? For example, if this object was supposed to be hitting a wall, yeah, I would definitely want that. So all of this stuff I've done here would be wrong because it needs to have a more abrupt stop. But what if it hits the wall with just the bottom edge? Now the top should keep going, but the forward momentum would stop. There's all of these things, all of these questions. There's the key here is that there's no solution to this. One solution that you just apply this and it'll work for every moving hold ever. Because no two moving holds are the same. But as long as you think through it and you break it down and you can just focus on one curve at a time, it will work out. Look at how I worked on the moving holds here. So when you've got a complex rig like this, suddenly a moving hold isn't just one control or one object. It's many, many objects. So now, how do we do this and make it work? Honestly, it's the same thing. When I'm creating a moving hold on a character as complex as this, I will just mark out my moving hold or my holds where the character is going to stop and then when they're going to start moving again. And then, let me actually just turn off the audio here. There we go. So let's find a hold. So I'm just set everything. You can see there's a hold right there. And then I just go one control at a time, one attribute at a time, and I work through them. I start with the hips. Okay, how are the hips going to stop? Because usually, in most cases, the hips are going to be the main force behind the character. So how are the hips going to stop? Are they going to just gently ease? Are they going to overshoot and settle? So let's find this hold here. So yeah, like right in here. So technically the hold is actually starting back here. If you look at the whole body, it comes through. This is when the hips start to hold back here. And if we look at our arcs, well, translate Y, overshooting, and then it settles. Translate Z, it overshoots, but it overshoots just a little bit sooner. And then comes in. Translate X, same thing, overshoot, because there's a lot of momentum here. But you can see how I made sure to push that overshoot so that they're not the same on each one. The rotation, this is just a nice ease in. But it's got anticipation at the end there. Here, same thing, anticipation, ease. This one overshoots. It's just going through one attribute at a time. And then going through, once you've done that, into the spine and then into the hands, and not being afraid to keep certain things moving. So for example, when the hips stop here, watch the hands. During the hold, the hands come down. So I created a secondary hold, and this is just from analyzing reference, from kind of picking out your moments and breaking things down. As the hips start to hold, the hands come up and they hold, and then as the character stops, he does this. Boop. So it's kind of boop, boop. So even though the hips have stopped, it doesn't mean everything else has to. Again, going back to that cookie jar example, if I'm reaching for a cookie jar and someone tells me to stop, it's not, and then everything freezes. Maybe that arm kind of keeps going and my eyes keep darting over and it's like, yes, yes, yeah, yeah, no. You still have that residual motion. Not everything has to freeze. That's your reference. That's analyzing motion in many forms, not just reference, but kind of just in life, and really focusing on understanding why things happen. And all of that comes to asking yourself questions. Why does this happen? Why am I not doing that? Should I do it? Sometimes the answer is no. But you want to ask yourself those questions. Ask yourself all the questions. That's how you're going to get better and keep improving.